Hello, I'm Ron Strickland. This webcast is one of a series in which I'm offering some comments on topics from the courses I teach in literature and cultural studies. This particular video is one of a group on Toni Morrison's novel, The Bluest Eye. In another video, I've discussed how Morrison fuses the theme of racial self-loathing and racial self-consciousness with the structure of a Bildungsroman, a coming-of-age story. The coming of age, the growing sexual awareness of a young African-American girl called Pecola Breedlove and her two friends, Claudia and Frida McTeer. Here I want to look at another example of that fusion of racial self-consciousness, racial self-loathing, and coming of age in the experience of Cholly Breedlove, Pecola's father. Cholly Breedlove is one of the most unsympathetic characters in the novel. He has raped his daughter, Pecola, and yet he is not simply a villain, not simply unsympathetic in Morrison's treatment. He, too, has had a traumatic experience of racial humiliation associated with an early sexual experience. The incident I'm focusing on occurs in the spring section of the novel. Cholly's about 15 years old. His custodial parent, Aunt Jimmy, has passed away. During the long reception, the afternoon after the funeral, Cholly and a young girl called Darlene and another young couple leave the reception and go for a walk. In the Random House Vintage Edition of 2007, it occurs on pages 143 to 149. Suki, Jake, Darlene, and Cholly walked through several backyards until they came to an open field. They ran across it and came to a dry riverbed lined with green. The object of the walk was a wild vineyard where muscadine grew. Too new, too tight to have much sugar, they were eaten anyway. None of them wanted, not then, the grape's easy relinquishing of all its dark juice. The restraint, the holding off, the promise of sweetness that had yet to unfold excited them more than full ripeness would have done. At last their teeth were on edge, and the boys diverted themselves by pelting the girls with the grapes. Their slim black boy wrists made G-clefs in the air as they executed the tosses. The chase took Cholly and Darlene away from the lip of the gully, and when they paused for breath, Jake and Suki were nowhere in sight. Darlene's white cotton dress was stained with juice. Her big blue hair bow had come undone, and the sundown breeze was picking it up and fluttering it about her head. They were out of breath and sank down in the green and purple grass on the edge of the pine woods. Cholly lay on his back, panting, his mouth full of the taste of muscadine, listening to the pine needles rustling loudly in their anticipation of rain. The smell of promised rain, pine, and muscadine made him giddy. The sun had gone and pulled away its shreds of light. Turning his head to see where the moon was, Cholly caught sight of Darlene in moonlight behind him. She was huddled into a D, arms encircling drawn-up knees, on which she rested her head. Cholly could see her bloomers and the muscles of her young thighs. "We better get on back," he said. Yeah, she stretched her legs flat on the ground and began to retie her hair ribbon. "Mama gonna whoop me." "Nah, she ain't." "Uh-huh, she told me she would if I get dirty." "You ain't dirty." "I am too, look at that." She dropped her hands from the ribbon and smoothed out a place on her dress where the grape stains were heaviest. Cholly felt sorry for her. It was just as much his fault. Suddenly he realized that Aunt Jimmy was dead, for he missed the fear of being whipped. There was nobody to do it except Uncle O.V., and he was bereaved too. "Let me," he said. He rose to his knees, facing her, and tried to tie her ribbon. Darlene put her hands under his open shirt and rubbed the damp, tight skin. When he looked at her in surprise, she stopped and laughed. "Hold still," he said. "How am I going to get this?" As you may well have guessed, Even if you haven't yet read this section of the novel, this passage is about to evolve into a scene of teenage sex. What I find especially impressive about the way the author sets up this scene is the contrast between this scene and the funeral reception which precedes it. The funeral is an event for adults. It's formal, it's serious, it's a time of gravity and grief. The young people are dressed up, they feel out of place. Then they escape through several backyards of civilization into this wild grove of muscadine grapes. There they gorge themselves on this forbidden fruit, like Adam and Eve after tasting the forbidden fruit in John Milton's Paradise Lost. She tickled his ribs with her fingertips. He giggled and grabbed his ribcage. They were on top of each other in a moment, she corkscrewing her hands into his clothes, he returning the play, digging into the neck of her dress, and then under her dress. When he got his hands in her bloomers, she suddenly stopped laughing and looked serious. Cholly, frightened, was about to take his hands away, but she held his wrist so he couldn't move it. He examined her then with his fingers, and she kissed his face and mouth. Cholly found her muscadine-lipped mouth distracting. Darlene released his head, shifted her body, and pulled down her pants. After some trouble with the buttons, Cholly dropped his pants down to his knees. Their bodies began to make sense to him, and it was not as difficult as he had thought it would be. She moaned a little, but the excitement collecting inside him made him close his eyes and regard her moans as no more than pine sighs over his head. Just as he felt an explosion threaten, Darlene froze and cried out. He thought he had heard her, but when he looked at her face, she was staring wildly at something over his shoulder. He jerked around. There stood two white men, one with a spirit lamp, the other with a flashlight. There was no mistake about their being white. He could smell it. Cholly jumped, trying to kneel, stand, and get his pants up, all in one motion. The men had long guns. The snicker was a long, asthmatic cough. The other raced the flashlight all over Cholly and Darlene. "Get on with it," said the flashlight one. "Sir," said Cholly, trying to find a buttonhole. "I said get on with it, and make it good. Make it good." There was no place for Cholly's eyes to go. They slid about, furtively searching for shelter, while his body remained paralyzed. The flashlight man lifted his gun down from his shoulder, and Cholly heard the clop of metal. He dropped back to his knees. Darlene had her head averted, her eyes staring out of the lamplight into the surrounding darkness, and looking almost unconcerned, as though they had no part in the drama taking place around them. With a violence born of total helplessness, he pulled her dress up, lowered his trousers and underwear. Darlene put her hands over her face as Cholly began to simulate what had gone on before. He could do no more than make believe. The flashlight made a moon on his behind. I think this scene is masterfully constructed, and it so poignantly evokes the ever-present terror, the constant threat of trauma involved in all stages of life under the conditions of early 20th century American racism. This flashback to this crucial earlier moment of Cholly's life is especially important to emphasize that there is no escape from racial humiliation in this society, and that the guilty, as well as the innocent, have also suffered from this psychological trauma. With that, I'll conclude this video. As always, if you have questions or comments, send me an email.